Ladies and gentlemen, the captain has turned on the fasten seatbelt sign. If you haven't already done so, please make sure the volume of this podcast is set perfectly to your listening enjoyment. Please take your seat, whether that's on the treadmill, car, sofa, or bed, and buckle in for the last trip. My name is Jamie Beebe, and I'll be your tour guide, recreating someone's last days in paradise. On behalf of myself and everyone behind the scenes, please enjoy the Last Trip podcast. And because nobody likes a long flight to get to where they want to be, let's prepare for takeoff. On a warm September morning in 2019, a bright yellow Jeep Wrangler was found abandoned in the parking lot of a remote trailhead on the island of St. John in the U.S. Virgin Islands. Inside, nothing seemed out of place, but the woman who rented it was gone. Lucy Schuhmann, a 48-year-old traveler from Louisville, Kentucky, had come to the island alone, seeking peace, nature, and perhaps a little healing. She checked into her rental near Coral Bay, unpacked her things, and then, one day, simply vanished. Her belongings were still at the rental. Her ID was found in her daypack, sitting near the end of a trail. But despite an intense ground and water search across the island, Lucy has never been seen again. Was it a tragic accident, a deliberate disappearance, or something far more sinister hiding beneath the island's serene surface? To understand the mystery of Lucy Schuhmann's disappearance, you have to understand the island where she vanished. St. John is the smallest of the three main U.S. Virgin Islands, and the most secluded. It's just about 20 square miles of steep green hills, turquoise bays, and winding trails that snake through dense jungle and along dramatic cliffs. There are no airports here, no big cruise ports. To get to St. John, you have to want to get to St. John. Most visitors take a ferry from nearby St. Thomas, and when they arrive, they often say the same thing. It feels like stepping into a postcard. St. John is more than paradise beaches and swaying palm trees. The island holds stories, some buried in the ruins of its colonial past, and some whispered in the wind that rushes through the hills at night. Long before it was a tourist haven, St. John was home to the Taino people, who fished its waters and worshipped at sacred petroglyphs, still visible on jungle rock faces today. In the early 1700s, it was claimed by the Danish and transformed into a network of sugar plantations run by enslaved Africans. The island's brutal colonial history remains etched into its landscape, most famously in the haunting ruins of the Annaberg sugar plantation, where stone walls crumbled beneath the weight of centuries. That history turned violent in 1733, when enslaved people on St. John launched one of the earliest and most significant slave revolts in the Americas. For months, they held the island. The Danish eventually regained control, but the legacy of resistance never left. Today, 2/3 of St. John is protected as Virgin Islands National Park. It's a hiker's paradise, with trails that weave through banyan forests, past petroglyphs and plantation ruins, and out to rocky outcrops like Ram Head, where Lucy's backpack was found. Ram Head Trail is one of the most breathtaking and isolated hikes on St. John. It cuts through dry coastal shrubland, climbs past cacti and crumbling cliffs, and ends at a dramatic promontory that jets into the Caribbean Sea. From the top, the view is staggering. Blue ocean in every direction, waves crashing against jagged rock far below, and the faint outline of St. Croix on a clear day. It feels like the edge of the world. And when you're there, especially alone, it's easy to feel small. But for all its beauty, Ram Head has a darker undertone. Locals will tell you, in hushed tones, that something about the trail feels different, heavy, still. Some even say it's haunted, that the spirits of those who suffered and died on the island's plantations still wander the cliffs. After all, Just a short distance away are the ruins of the Reef Bay sugar mill, and stories of ghostly figures and unexplained noises are common. And then there's the true story that shadows Ram Head, a piece of brutal history often overlooked by visitors. During the slave revolt in 1733, a group of rebels refusing to surrender to the returning Danish forces chose to leap to their deaths from the cliffs at Ram Head rather than face re-enslavement. The silence out there isn't just the sound of nature. It's history. It's grief. It's defiance. Today, hikers come to Ram Head for the view, for the solitude. But it's not hard to imagine how a person could disappear out there. The cliffs are steep, the ocean below, unforgiving. There's little to no cell service, and once you leave the salt pond parking area, you're on your own. It's a place of reflection, but also of risk. Visitors come to St. John for the nature, the history, the snorkeling and diving in crystal clear waters. But the island still feels wild, remote, unpredictable, and sometimes unsettling. There are local legends too, stories that float around the island, especially after dark. The ghost of a woman in white said to appear near the Reef Bay sugar mill, strange lights spotted on isolated trails. Some say the ruins of old plantations hold spirits that never truly rested. Then there's Bordeaux Mountain, one of the highest points on the island, and the place some locals say has a heavy, watching energy. Others talk about hearing footsteps on empty trails, or voices carried in the wind when no one's around. It's the kind of place that feels magical by day and a little ominous at night. But for all its mystery, St. John has long drawn travelers looking for peace, solitude, and escape. That's what Lucy Schuhmann loved about it. And she was no stranger to the island. She'd been there many times. She knew the trails. She knew the people. It was a place where she felt free. And yet, it's also where she vanished. When you're on St. John, it's easy to forget how wild and unforgiving nature can be. But the island remembers. And sometimes it keeps its secrets.
Hello, twisted humans.
Do you find yourself wanting to know more about the latest murder, conspiracy, cult, or haunting?
Then this is the podcast for you.
In 1952, there was a record high of UFOs reported. 1,500 sightings.
There has been evidence of human sacrifice, devil worship, and it is haunted by more spirits than can be counted.
A family of 2 adults and 2 kids reportedly saw a giant flying thing with glowing red eyes.
And meanwhile, the family's nanny that helped Veronica to care for her and Lucian's children was found bludgeoned to death in the basement of their family home. I'm Alicia.
And I'm Sierra, and this is Twisted and Uncorked.
Before we talk about what happened in September of 2019, we need to talk about Lucy Schuhmann. Because this story isn't just about a disappearance, it's about a life, a remarkable life. Lucy Evelyn Schuhmann was born on March 11, 1971. She grew up in Louisville, Kentucky, and from a young age, people noticed something about her. She was bright, not just book smart, but luminously curious about the world. The kind of kid who wanted to know why, who challenged rules, who saw possibilities everywhere. In her 20s, Lucy was plugged into Louisville's local music scene. At one point, she was even dating the frontman of a locally beloved punk band called King Horse. While her friends kept hanging out with musicians and staying up late in smoky bars, Lucy started carving out her own, quieter, but no less intense path. She waitressed part-time to support herself and went back to school to earn a bachelor's degree in philosophy from the University of Louisville. And that says a lot about her right there. Philosophy isn't the kind of degree you choose if you want a quick, practical path. You choose it because you're interested in truth, in meaning, in the bigger questions. That was Lucy, always digging deeper, always thinking beyond the surface. She was independent to her core, never interested in chasing clout or showing off. She wasn't even on Facebook, barely touched Instagram. She didn't need an audience. But if you knew her, if you were lucky enough to spend time with her, you knew you were in the presence of someone who just got it. She had this way of lighting up a room without ever trying to. Always smiling, always open, always present. Lucy loved to travel. And more than that, she loved to travel alone. Now, not everyone can do that. It takes a certain kind of confidence, a certain kind of peace within yourself to find joy in solo adventure. But for Lucy, it was second nature. She wasn't looking to escape. She was looking to connect with nature, with herself, with the world. She was into fitness, always taking care of her body, her mind, her spirit. Hiking, yoga, meditation, whatever helped her stay strong, stay grounded. But she wasn't one of those people who made you feel bad for not keeping up. She just quietly led by example. Her friends adored her. Her family couldn't say enough great things. She made people feel good, seen, heard, understood. She was the kind of friend you could call at 2 a.m. and she'd pick up. She'd listen, really listen. And then she'd give you the kind of advice that stuck with you for years. Thoughtful, warm, and unfiltered in the best way. She didn't sugarcoat things, but she always led with kindness. Lucy never married. She didn't have kids, but she poured her love into everyone around her. Her friends' kids called her the book lady because she'd come over with anatomy books and read to them, turning complicated science into playful learning. She made everything interesting. She was a modern-day Wonder Woman, a cool-headed problem solver who never panicked. She was sharp, razor sharp, but soft where it mattered. If anyone could think or fight their way out of a tragic situation, it was Lucy. She didn't scare easily, and she never, ever gave up. One day, seemingly out of nowhere, Lucy decided she wanted to learn to fly. Just like that, she set her sights on the sky. She started studying for her pilot's license in the early 90s, and before long, she was a flight instructor. But she didn't stop there. Lucy worked her way up to become a full-fledged commercial airline captain. No shortcuts, no handouts, just raw determination and grit. She kept going and going and going. She didn't believe in ceilings. If she saw one, she smashed right through it. And then she pivoted again. In their 40s, most people are starting to settle down. Not Lucy. That's when she decided to go to medical school at the University of Louisville, the same school where she earned her first degree. She also earned her master's in public health at the same time. Now let me say that again. She was in medical school and earning a public health degree. That's who she was. Her motivation? It wasn't about power or prestige. Lucy wanted to help people, especially the ones who slipped through the cracks. She wanted to be a lifeline for friends who didn't have great insurance, who couldn't navigate the system, who needed someone in their corner. And Lucy was always in your corner. She'd go out of her way to find resources for people in need, whether it was medical help, financial assistance, or just a safe place to land. She had a way of getting things done, even when it seemed impossible. She'd call in favors, bend systems, advocate relentlessly. You wanted her on your side. You wanted her in your life. She was wrapping up her qualifying exam when she disappeared, getting ready for residency, her whole future still unfolding with all that fire and compassion behind it. Lucy loved St. John. She visited the island often. She knew it well. She wasn't a tourist stumbling into unfamiliar ground. She was an experienced hiker who had been on those trails before, including the very one where she vanished. And that's what makes this story so chilling. How does someone like Lucy, sharp, strong, experienced, and deeply loved, just vanish? No signs of struggle, no calls for help, no trace. It doesn't make sense. Lucy wasn't reckless. She wasn't naive. She was a beautiful, twinkle-eyed force of nature, a devilish grin, a brilliant mind, and a heart that held space for everyone. And on a clear September day in 2019, She was swallowed up by something we still don't understand. Lucy arrived on St. John on Sunday, September 15th, 2019. She'd been to the island many times before. It was a place she loved, a place where she had friends, a place that felt like a second home. She booked a stay in Coral Bay, on the quieter, more rugged side of the island. Her plan was to spend a few peaceful days surrounded by nature, hiking the trails she knew well, and just recharging. She was scheduled to check out on Thursday, September 19th, but she never did. The last confirmed sighting of Lucy was on the morning of Wednesday, September 18th, sometime between 7 and 8 a.m., leaving her rental. She appeared to be heading out for a hike, something she'd done many times before. And then, nothing. When Lucy didn't check out on Thursday, the rental owner became concerned. Her belongings were still in the room, her clothes, her things, even her phone. It didn't look like someone who was ready to leave. It looked like someone who planned to come back. So the rental owner raised the alarms that Lucy was potentially missing. By Friday afternoon, her car rental, a bright yellow Jeep Wrangler, was found abandoned at the Salt Pond trailhead, part of the Virgin Islands National Park on the island's south shore. It's a popular hike, leading to one of St. John's most dramatic viewpoints, Ram Head. For a seasoned hiker like Lucy, it would have been a familiar route. That's when the search began. Park rangers, local police, and volunteer rescuers from St. John Rescue mobilized quickly. From the start, the entire island rallied around Lucy. Word spread fast. This was a small community, and Lucy wasn't a stranger. She had friends here, people who knew her, who cared about her. From the moment her disappearance was reported, the island came alive with the effort to find her. The first major clue came on that same trail, Ram Head. A hiker who'd gone up to take some pictures near the rocky overlook at the end of the trail stumbled upon something strange. A black travel backpack. It was sitting near the cliff's edge, tucked to the right side of the path. Inside were Lucy's belongings. A driver's license from Kentucky, water bottle, glasses, rental Jeep keys, a change of clothing, and a packed lunch. Everything she'd need for a long day hike. Everything except a phone. She left that back at her rental property. Also on the trail, searchers found another identification card, this one belonging to a local woman named Monica. But after looking into it, officials determined that ID had been lost earlier that week on a completely unrelated hike. So all they really had was Lucy's backpack. No signs of struggle, no blood, no broken branches, no obvious fall. Just a backpack, sitting at the edge of a trail overlooking a cliff of rocks. Search crews expanded quickly. On Sunday, September 22nd, just a week after Lucy had arrived on the island, trained teams began combing the southern coast. They searched from land and water. Volunteers, police, and national park staff fanned out across the steep and overgrown terrain. The Ram Head area is breathtaking, but also treacherous. Sharp volcanic rock, cacti, stinging insects, intense heat and humidity, and narrow cliffside trails made the effort grueling. Then came the next complication, weather. Tropical storm Karen approached the Virgin Islands on Monday, and the already dangerous conditions became even more unstable. Search efforts had to be suspended. Trails were blocked by downed trees. Heavy surf made shoreline access nearly impossible. But as soon as the storm passed, the teams resumed. By Wednesday, September 25th, the search expanded to include the most remote and rugged parts of the park. Helicopters circled above. Divers and snorkelers scoured the shoreline and the surrounding waters. Park staff rappelled down steep cliff faces around Ram Head, searching crevices and ledges where a person might have fallen or might be hiding. And that same morning, a tip came into Crime Stoppers. It led investigators to refocus their search around a nearby body of water near the Salt Pond. Now, while it didn't lead to Lucy, it showed that people were still paying attention, still trying, still hoping, and that maybe someone out there knew more than they were letting on. On October 1st, nearly 2 weeks after Lucy was last seen, search dogs were brought to the island. And these weren't ordinary dogs. One was trained specifically in detecting human remains. The next day, October 2nd, after thousands of combined hours and exhaustive coverage of both land and sea, the National Park Service made a difficult decision. The active search would be scaled back. From that point on, it would shift to what they called limited continuous status. That meant the effort wouldn't stop, but it would no longer be all hands on deck every hour of the day. There were simply no new clues, no new direction, nothing to go on. The search up until that point had been nothing short of extraordinary. Over 2,000 hours were logged by professionals and volunteers. Teams came in from across the country. The National Park Service sent climbing rangers from Grand Teton, Shenandoah, the Great Smokies, and other national parks. Ropes were used to descend into hard-to-reach places along cliffs. Divers swam into the treacherous surf, searching caves and coral shelves. The U.S. Geological Survey sent a drone team to map and scan the area from above. Local volunteers worked side by side with federal agents and rescue specialists, risking injury to find a woman they may or may not have known, but who they refused to forget. And through all of it, one question remained. Where is Lucy Schuhmann? What could have happened on that familiar trail in broad daylight to someone so smart, so capable, so prepared? Did she fall? Was it an accident? Or is there something darker lurking beneath this island paradise? Lucy's disappearance remains unsolved, and her story doesn't fade because people gave up. It fades because the island gave nothing back. So let's pause here. We're 2 weeks into an all-out search. Lucy's been missing since September 18th, 2019. Her backpack was found, oddly, 2 days later, in plain sight on a popular trail. But no trace of her body, no witnesses, no clues, nothing. And that's where the questions begin. Because with a case like this, where there are no signs of struggle, no obvious accident, and not a single confirmed clue, you're left with one of the most unsettling types of mysteries. The kind where everything is possible and nothing makes sense. So let's start with what we do know. The Ram trailhead isn't easy, but it's not that hard. Lucy had hiked it many times before. It's about 1.5 miles out to the end, with some rocky stretches and exposure to the sun. But for someone as experienced and fit as Lucy, this would have been a typical morning hike. It ends at a bluff, a high breezy overlook with sweeping ocean views. The kind of place you stop, drop your pack, drink some water, maybe eat lunch, just take it all in. And that's exactly where her backpack was found. One theory suggests Lucy simply slipped or fell while walking around that rocky point. It's exposed, uneven terrain, and accidents do happen. But authorities have publicly said they don't believe that's what happened, because if she had fallen, there's a very good chance her body would have been found. Most of the area below the trail isn't water, it's jagged rock, sharp, unforgiving volcanic stone. There's nowhere for a body to just disappear. No caves, no crevices that haven't already been searched. It's not a deep ocean right there, not the kind of place where you vanish into the sea. So no fall, no sign of injury, no blood, no personal effects strewn about, nothing disturbed. Which brings us back to that backpack. Why was it left behind? If Lucy had set it down to enjoy the view, maybe she wandered off without it. But that's not really like her. And why was it only found 2 days later on one of the most trafficked hiking trails on the island? Salt Pond Bay and Ramhead are popular spots, even midweek. Tourists, locals, day hikers. The area where her pack was found is open and visible. So if it had been there since Wednesday morning, why did no one spot it until Friday? Could it be that Lucy never made it to that overlook at all? Could someone have placed her backpack there intentionally to mislead searchers? And then there's the missing phone. Her cell was left at the rental, which is unusual. Sure, there's no consistent cell service out there, but most people still bring their phones. For photos, for music, for the clock. Lucy wasn't a social media user, but she was a traveler, an explorer. She brought anatomy books to kids. You really think she wouldn't want to snap a photo of the horizon from one of the most breathtaking viewpoints in the Caribbean? That phone being left behind, it's odd. It doesn't add up. And the deeper you go, the more unsettling things start to look. There are whispers, rumors, and warnings that in and around the trailhead, not everything is as serene as it seems. 2 men, reportedly known to the area, have been called out multiple times by solo female hikers. Now, they've never been formally charged, but their behavior? Uncomfortable, aggressive. There were stories of women being followed, harassed. One woman reported being grabbed by the wrist. Another said a man jumped out at her on the trail. Someone else recalled a man waving a machete. There were mentions, by name, given to park officials about individuals who made women feel threatened. But whether those men were ever questioned, we don't know. There's no public record of it. And this isn't ancient history. One case of sexual assault in the area only prompted action after it happened, despite previous complaints. Then there's this. Lucy's Jeep was parked at Salt Pond, a known break-in spot, placed with little oversight, a trailhead surrounded by thick brush and hidden corners. If someone were waiting for an opportunity, it's not a bad place to find it. So what if this wasn't an accident at all? What if Lucy never even made it to Ramhead? What if she met someone on the way up or in the parking lot who had other intentions? The authorities have never ruled out foul play. They can't, because there's no evidence to rule anything out. No body, no struggle, no clear crime scene, just absence and silence. And silence is the perfect cover. There's another theory that Lucy, injured on the rocks, attempted to reach help. She may have tried to swim to an accessible part of the shore, but this area is dangerous. The water around Ramhead is deep, the currents are strong, and yes, there are sharks. If she went into the ocean, it's possible she was pulled out to sea. But even in that case, it's strange that no items, no clothing, no shoes, nothing washed up. It's like she just evaporated. And then, years later, the most cryptic twist of all. In 2023, someone started commenting on posts about Lucy's disappearance on Facebook. They claimed the case was solved, that it was over, but not giving any other details. Now, if that's true, no one told authorities. Lucy is still listed as a missing person. The National Park Service has released no new findings, and no public statements have confirmed anything. So what do we make of that? A hoax, a cruel joke, someone wanting attention, or maybe something more? Was Lucy Schuhmann the victim of a tragic accident or something more calculated? Was she in the wrong place at the wrong time, or was she targeted? And perhaps the most haunting of all, if someone did harm her, are they still out there? Lucy's disappearance left so many questions and not nearly enough answers. But while those early days were filled with confusion and theories, there was something else happening quietly in the background. Something that doesn't get talked about enough. Lucy's family was there, on the island, grieving, hoping, searching, and asking for privacy. They didn't give interviews. They didn't speak to press. And they had every right to make that decision. But it's a complicated thing to navigate, because when someone you love goes missing, every hour, every headline, every share can be critical. But also, time becomes strange. You're trying to search, to survive, to hold on. Talking to reporters is the last thing on your mind. Here's the hard truth. Media matters. Publicity matters. It's uncomfortable, it's messy, and it feels invasive, but it matters. In those early hours, in those first couple days, getting the word out to the right people could mean the difference between a recovery and a cold case. If public speaking is too painful or overwhelming, and honestly for most families it is, appointing someone to speak on your behalf can be a game changer. A friend, a cousin, a volunteer advocate, someone who can get the word out, keep the media engaged, and make sure your loved one's story is still being told. Because media coverage matters. Park staff said they were in close contact with Lucy's family. A close relative flew to St. John, met with volunteers, and even left a handwritten note thanking those involved. We are grateful for your dedication and generosity of spirit in the search for Lucy. Your selflessness and kindness will always be remembered. As time passed and leads faded, questions began to bubble up online, especially in Facebook groups. Some people wondered if Lucy's family had given up too soon. Others speculated that maybe they knew something the public didn't. That's the brutal reality of a missing persons case. Silence gets filled with speculation. Pain gets misread as distance. And every choice the family makes is scrutinized by strangers who weren't there. And we shouldn't rush to judge. Grief looks different for everyone. We also don't know what Lucy's family was told or what they were dealing with. We know what you can do if someone you love ever goes missing in a remote area or while traveling. It starts by acting fast, contacting the local authorities. Don't wait. There's no 24-hour rule for filing a missing person report. That's a myth. Time is precious. Start by calling local law enforcement, park rangers, resort security, anyone in the area who can begin looking immediately. Don't rely on digital flyers or hashtags alone. Reach out to local media stations, tourist boards, and community Facebook groups. These online communities, especially in places like St. John, are incredibly tight-knit. People watch out for each other, and the moment they know someone's missing, they'll join the search. When you're creating a missing person flyer, make it easy to share. Include a clear, recent photo, ideally where your loved one is smiling and their face is unobstructed. Add their full name, any nicknames they respond to, and the last time and place they were seen. Be specific. What they were wearing, what they were carrying, whether they were on foot or had a vehicle. Include physical details like height, hair color, eye color, and any unique features. Finally, provide a phone number people can call, one for police or the investigating agency, and one for a family member or point of contact. Also, give this some thought. What contact info do you want to use for yourself? It's best to use a specific email that is only for this purpose, that you can share login info for. It can feel like information overload in a time where your mind is barely functioning, but every detail helps. Because somewhere, someone may have seen something, and they may not even realize it until they see that flyer. For travelers, especially solo travelers, there are things we can all do to stay safer. First and foremost, always tell someone where you're going. Whether you're hiking for an hour or heading off on a day-long adventure, leave a note, send a text, check in. Let someone know your plans. Don't rely on cell service. In remote places like St. John, it can be spotty or non-existent. But that doesn't mean you should leave your phone behind. Even without service, it's still a flashlight, a map, a camera, and an emergency tool. Take it with you. Start your hikes early. Leave plenty of daylight. Stick to established trails. Pay attention to your surroundings. And most importantly, listen to your gut. If something feels wrong, turn back. If someone makes you feel uneasy, don't keep walking just to be polite. Stand up for yourself. Fuck politeness. And be aware of the reality that some trails, even the ones in beautiful, peaceful places, aren't always safe. There have been incidents at Salt Pond and along the Roundhead Trail. Women followed, men hiding along the paths. This doesn't mean you shouldn't hike. It doesn't mean you shouldn't travel. But it does mean we all need to be smarter, more cautious, and better prepared. Lucy was all of those things, Smart, experienced, prepared. And yet she still vanished. And that's what makes this case so hard, so haunting. And my number one tip to staying alive on vacation is to pay attention to your gut. If something doesn't feel right, it isn't. Lucy Schuhmann has now been missing for over 5 years. Her case remains open. Her name is still listed in national and local databases, and the people who knew and loved her, they haven't stopped thinking about her, not for a single day. She was 48 years old when she disappeared. Smart, strong, kind, and full of life. Today, she would be 54. Lucy is white, 5'8", about 130 pounds, with blonde hair, blue eyes, and an athletic build. She was last seen on the morning of Wednesday, September 18th, 2019, leaving her rental in Coral Bay on the island of St. John in the U.S. Virgin Islands. She was driving a bright yellow, rented Jeep Wrangler with the license plate number JAR-693. That Jeep was later found parked at the Salt Pond trailhead. Her backpack was discovered 2 days later near the rocky overlook at the top of Ramhead Trail. But Lucy was never seen again. No matter how much time passes, someone out there may still know something. Maybe it's a conversation they overheard, a person they saw on the trail, a detail they didn't think was important at the time. Sometimes the smallest things are the keys that unlock everything. If you or anyone you know has information about the disappearance of Lucy Schuhmann, please call the National Park Service tip line at 866-995-8467. You can remain anonymous, but your voice might be the one that finally helps bring Lucy home. And if Lucy's story moved you, share this episode, post about her, say her name, keep her story alive. Because Lucy deserves answers. Her loved ones deserve closure. Until that happens, her case is not over. And finally, remember to leave a review and rate this podcast 5 stars if you like the show, or hell, even if you don't. But either way, feel free to let me know what you think. Please follow The Last Trip on Instagram at The Last Trip Crime Pod and subscribe on Patreon to support the show. You'll get extra research, videos, photos, and updates, and even learn a little more about my personal travels. That's patreon.com/The Last Trip Podcast. I'm Jamie Beebe, bringing you your last trip and signing off until the next one. Thanks for listening.